Could analog horror survive the Doomslayer? Is a video I was suggested by on my For You page some couple of days ago, made by error code 9081. As I said, this was suggested for me some days ago, and I was being excited for this video because, one, I love analog horror in general, and I love the Doomslayer. So this is gonna be a very, very interesting video. Also, just for me here, heads up, this is gonna be a lot of yapping for me, probably at the beginning or the end. So overall, sit back, relax, grab something to eat or drink, and let's get into this video, because I will just tell you right away, you can take all of analog horror in all of fiction, slam them into one creature versus the Doomslayer, and they are straight up just, they're gone, they're dead, they're out of here. You take a whole thing and just throw it out the window. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get into today's video, shall we?
Can some of the most powerful and dangerous creatures from analog horror survive the power of the Doomslayer? Well, in this video, I'm going to examine some powerful analog horror creatures to see if they could survive a run-in with the Doomslayer.
Hell yes, sir, that's my boy.
The analog horror series that I will include in this one-sided debate are Monument Mythos, Gemini Home Entertainment, and Monument Mythos, the Nixon verse, which is also Monument Mythos, but it's different enough to count it in. So, to set the stage for the video, let's begin with the Doomslayer, a never-tiring harbinger of slaughter who has taken down gods without breaking a sweat. Since scaling exact numbers and precise data for his strength is near impossible for a being that transcends reality, let's instead focus on what he has actually accomplished to get a better idea as to what a god killer like the Doomslayer can do. In the game Doom Eternal, he has slain powerful foes who are no stranger to warping and tearing reality apart, those of which are the manifestation of sin, who warps, distorts, and destroys reality just by existing. And to add on to this impressive feat, the icon of sin is also indestructible, so the Doomslayer had to get up close and personal to the reality-destroying titan to stab him in the brain in order to neutralize him. His next most notable feat is his battle with the creator of everything in the Doom series, a god who can create, change, and alter reality as he pleases. This was the Doomslayer's strongest foe, himself, and he beat himself quite easily. So even the Doomslayer's not enough for the Doomslayer. Now let's take a look at what he used to vanquish those incredibly powerful enemies. And just to keep things simple, let's focus on his stronger weaponry. The BFG 10,000, being the Doomslayer's strongest firearm, can blast a hole into planets like it did with Mars. His next most devastating weapon is the Unmaker, which fires highly concentrated Argent bolts that rival the BFG in its destructive power. Then we have the Ballista, a weapon that can vaporize foes using heated Argent energy. Then there is signature weapon, the Super Shotgun, which seems like a normal double-barrel shotgun, but this one can blast through just about anything, given that the Doomslayer essentially powers up any of his weapons, so they do much more than what they could normally do. As for melee, the Doomslayer has two main options. His Crucible, a blade made of hell energy and Argent mixed together to form a blade that can cut through just about anything and neutralize even the strongest of titans. And now for his strongest, most dangerous weapon. His hands. Yes, his hands. It is stated that he prefers using artillery and firearms that are already supercharged by his will to prolong the suffering of demons, because his hands would just be too quick, and finishing things off too quick isn't ideal, especially when you're having fun. For his durability, he is pretty much invincible, and somehow you can manage to kill the unkillable. He just respawns back in hell. Good as new, keep fighting. Once you got him targeting you, you might as well just give it up and let it happen, or fight for eternity. That is if you can, because Doom is eternal. Also, he's incredibly fast, being able to keep up with 6-dimensional beings like the Makers, who just fly through dimensions like they're in creative mode. So the Doomslayer is just broken. No need for further clarification. Let's start with one of the weakest analog horrors in this list. Not in general, just this list. Gemini Home Entertainment. Why choose this one? Well, in my video of analog horror versus retro Doomguy, many people wanted a Gemini Home Entertainment part. So here it is. To make this as interesting as possible, let's just focus on the strongest beings in Gemini Home Entertainment, the Iris and mutated Neptune. Scaling any lesser creatures would just be redundant because they would just be easy fodder. I mean, even the OG retro Doomguy can kill them. Mutated Neptune is the first planet seen in Gemini Home Entertainment that has been mutated by the the Iris. What makes it special is that it's a giant gas planet with a bunch of other creatures from Gemini Home Entertainment. It serves as a transport of sort for these creatures, so they can actually get to Earth via a large blast. The Iris, though, is the main antagonist, having the ability to mutate planets and travel around space. It has some minor reality warping powers, as well as telepathy and technopathy. So how do both planets compare? Well, let's begin with Neptune. To give the gas giant the best possible chance, let's say that its blasts are more than just a means of transportation of little creepy crawlies. If the Doomslayer came across this planet, then Neptune would use its limited attacks to try and get the Doomslayer away. After some pitiful attempts, the Doomslayer would just have to blast it with the BFG 10,000 to put a large hole in the planet, and a couple more blasts to make Neptune look like some blue Swiss cheese. The Iris would then respond to the threat of the Doomslayer by sending out every creature it could muster, and then they would all go extinct, and then it will try to use some of its telepathy and reality warping powers. When this doesn't work, it will use its technopathy to try and disable some of the weapons of the Slayer. If we say that this works, then no problem. The Slayer has a badass blade at his disposal that can tear up the living planet. So, incredibly easy win for the Doomslayer. Although it would take a little bit of time. I mean, it's a whole giant planet, you know. Now for Monument Mythos. Arguably one of the strongest and most dangerous analog horrors. For this series, I will just use the Air Force One Angel and the Horned Serpent. There's many more that are similarly as powerful, but they're about the same. For the Air Force One Angel, it's a metaphysical being compromised of young soldiers who join together because of their strong devotion to a cause. Since it exists in a metaphysical level, it eludes the laws of physics. This makes it incorporeal, so it can phase through solid objects. Its abilities include being able to manipulate light and electricity, and use that as an attack, or to disable and manipulate weaponry that uses electricity. It is functionally immortal, meaning that if not killed, it could live absolutely forever. Then we got the Horned Serpent. It's the strongest of pretty much the original Monument Mythos. This serpent came from George Washington. Yes, I'm not joking. It's a large entity that resembles a massive planet-sized snake that can warp and manipulate reality, teleport, use telepathy, and can even create realities. And it's still George Washington. So, can the Doomslayer beat George Washington or the Air Force One Angel? Let's begin with the Air Force One Angel. It would not be safe from the Doomslayer even if it is incorporeal. The Doomslayer is able to attack the Angel because of his willpower that gives him the ability to do whatever's necessary to get the job done. Any of his normal weapons should be more than enough, but for the sake of argument, let's say that nothing can really damage the Air Force One Angel because of its incorporeal nature. Well, the Doomslayer has just the ghost-busting tool in his arsenal, which is the plasma rifle. Yeah, I kind of forgot to mention it, but it can kind of, you know, microwave spirits until they explode. So what would pretty much go down, Doomslayer may not be able to really shoot it with its normal stuff, but you know, you just have to pull out the microwave beam and start cooking up a nice dinner with it. As for George Washington or the Horned Serpent, it would be much like, you know, Thor and Jormungand, but if Thor had guns. The Doomslayer would pretty much start shooting at it, tearing parts of it off while the serpent desperately tries to use its powers to try and warp reality and just find a way out away from the Doomslayer. After seeing that it's pretty much futile, the Doomslayer would just pretty much attack it and it would play out in the Doomslayer's favor. But if he, for some reason, couldn't kill it by normal means, then he has the Crucible, which could very easily disable that massive titan of a serpent.
Seems about right.
So what about the stronger version of Monument Mythos, the Nixon verse? Well, let's look at some of the strongest of the Nixon verse, which is Nixon, Richard Nixon, this fella right here. Yeah, I'm not joking. And you also have the Crescent King, along with obviously a couple others, but you know, let's just keep it simple and keep it to these two. So the Crescent King is a mimetically immortal being, which means that in order to beat him, you have to pretty much have him be forgotten about, or just kind of incapacitate him and neutralize him, so he can't really do anything. His abilities include manipulation of mind and soul, possession, nuclear power generation, incorporeality, and can create illusions. Now, for the most interesting one, Nixon. Some of his powers are fate immunity, creation, precognition, reality warping, and fictionalization, to name a few. And this ability of fate immunity pretty much means that he is able to escape or be immune to his fate, and fictionalization is the act of making something fiction. So now, let's move on to the confrontation, the Nixon verse versus the Doomslayer. The Crescent King would be more of an annoyance than a threat. His abilities and strengths are comparable to a powerful demon like the Titan in Doom Eternal, you know, obviously with the mind and soul manipulation and the possession, all of which the Doomslayer is immune to, but everything the Crescent King can throw at him, except maybe the nuclear power, could very well not work at all. I mean, it just won't. And even if somehow the nuclear stuff does work, because in the games he kind of does take damage from the radioactive stuff, he just has to put on a rad suit, so easy win. Ending the fight would be a bit annoying for the Doomslayer because he can't just straight up get rid of him. He has to try to somehow bypass his mimetic immortality, which is much easier said than done, even for the Doomslayer. This is because you gotta pretty much wipe everybody's mind of the Crescent King, and Doomslayer doesn't want to kill normal people. So there's a bit of a stalemate. But he has the Crucible, which can very well be used to neutralize the Crescent King. But let's say he might not be able to actually get to him with the Crucible because of his incorporeal nature. Well, he has the plasma rifle, which he could very annoyingly and kind of funnily just use to stun lock the Crescent King. And this would eventually, the consistent use of the microwave beam would just break the will of the Crescent King, and he would just give up. I mean, who wouldn't? Getting stun locked for eternity and then having your lackeys get chainsawed just to replenish the ammo to keep on going is definitely humiliating. And now for the main event, Nixon from the Nixonverse versus the Doomslayer. Since the abilities of Nixon parallel those of Davoth, which is the Doomslayer's strongest foe that he faced in games, the battle between Nixon and the Doomslayer would play out about the same, with a couple differences. The Doomslayer would go on to attack him and would be able to pretty much back him into a corner. And then, not having very many options, he'll try to use his fictionalization and also his fate immunity. And seeing as fictionalization really isn't working on the Slayer, because his anger and willpower shield him against that reality warping attack, Nixon would then have to rely on his fate immunity to pretty much survive. And since this is still a reality warping ability, because it changes what's supposed to happen, the Doomslayer effectively counters this. So there are two ways that he can be defeated. One way is just through brute force and a bunch of blasts and throwing hands, which pretty fun way to, you know, end things off. And then the next one would be just with the Crucible. Now, you might argue that the abilities of fictionalization and fate immunity could work, but you'd have to look at what happened with Davoth. This fella right here is pretty much the whole entire creator inside the lore of Doom Eternal. It would be wise to infer that Davoth is able to defy fate if he needs to, and the Icon of Sin changes reality around him and even destroys it. Destroying and changing reality is in the same ballpark as being free of your fate or turning things to straight fiction. So, just like with Davoth, this would make it so the Doomslayer wins. To answer the overarching question of the video, can analog horror survive the Doomslayer? Nope. Not a chance. It does not matter if they can warp, change, or do whatever they want with reality, because the Doomslayer will still be able to persevere through it with anger and determination that will propel him to do things that are just downright ludicrous. So, thanks for watching the video, and remember to subscribe, set those notifications to
Dude, I know he made another one with the classic original Doomslayer versus analog horror. Even if it's the original Doomguy, no one is surviving. They're all just getting bop, 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 you know, but a big shotgun in their face, literally. Or the Crucible itself. It depends on what weapon he has. Overall, this video was a solid 10 out of 10 because it did go exactly as I predicted. It is not even a fair fight. This is a absolute execution. And that's mostly it. Hope you guys have an amazing rest of the week. Take care, stay safe. There'll be a link down below to the original video and the channel. Go check it out. Show some support and love for that person. And see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.